What is happening, Riverbend? Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Aaron Foor. If you're just joining us for the first time, if you're a regular, thanks for hanging with us tonight. We have a great show tonight. I'm looking forward to talking about politics and faith. But I want to just set up the night a little bit so you understood kind of what Everything Matters is about, especially if you're new to the show. So Everything Matters kind of birthed out of my own experience. I think I grew up in the church, grew up in more of a religious setting where most of my life everything was about the spiritual element. And, something was going wrong, read the Bible more, pray, which as a pastor, I think those things are great. But there's more to life than just those things. I realize there's also an emotional side of life, emotional needs, practical needs, and spiritual needs. And so the idea of everything matters birthed out of this idea that everything matters, that we see God in the emotional parts of our life, and practical stuff, and spiritual things, and seeing how God weaves in and out his story through all these different experiences. So that's kind of what we do here at Everything Matters. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm going to start off tonight. This is our Bob Marley night. We try to pick a different artist or group every night that I like, basically. So hopefully you're tuning in some Bob Marley fans tonight. So I actually have my son's ukulele. He has a little Deadpool sticker on there, so makes the thing even cooler, right? So anyway, if you know the song, sing along. We'll have some good time tonight. A little Bob Marley for you. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. Let them all pass all their dirty remarks. There is one question that I'd really love to ask. Is there a place for the hopeless in us who has hurt all mankind just to save his own? One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. Let's get together and fight this holy Armageddon. So when the man comes, there will be no doom. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner. There ain't no hiding from the Father of creation. Say it, come on. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Yay, Bob Marley. Are you guys feeling that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like
oh, yes.
golf clap inside the studio here. So awkward, so stinking awkward. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I played that Bob Marley song for a couple of reasons. You know the history of Bob Marley. He was from Jamaica, and Bob Marley wrote that in the middle of a very interesting time in Jamaica. Jamaica was really split up politically, a lot of civil unrest and different things going on. There's two different political parties. And Bob Marley, found himself not joining either one, kind of staying neutral and trying to actually bring people together. That's where he wrote the song One Love, One Heart. And that idea actually spread globally, went out from Jamaica. And so those are some of the things we want to talk about tonight. We're going to get into politics and faith. And who knows where we're going to go with that. But I have some guests here tonight I want to introduce. As always, my buddy Ty Taylor here, and he's this side of me. Hopefully you can see him over there. And over here we have Grace Hedges,
Hello.
who is the daughter of Kevin Hedges, who's sitting next. Kevin's going to be taking our questions and things as you are throwing questions at us tonight, which I hope you have quick questions for us tonight. It's going to be fun. And Grace, you are just finished up your first year at
Dallas University of Dallas.
University of Dallas. So she's back home here hanging. We thought we'd have Grace to have some perspective tonight. And you are a political science major, correct?
I am a politics and education double major.
Whoa,
so
check you out. Check you out. The family's very proud. So I think this is going to be a great subject for you. I'd like to just introduce my friend Alan Hilton. Alan and I actually spent a lot of time together. We play golf together a lot, and he's one of my closer friends here in Austin. And he happens to be just one of the smartest guys I know. And so this is actually, I would say Alan's one of the people who I think is an expert in some of the stuff we're talking about tonight. But Alan, you have this crazy resume, and all of us who know you were all like proud of you and proud to say, hey, we know Alan Hilton because he's like this guy's. But can you give me a little bit of the resume of just so the people on the show can kind of know where you're coming from? You've spoke a few times at church and at the men's summit. Some people have gotten to know you, but for some of the new viewers, can you just kind of give us a little bit of background where you come from? It'd be good.
So I was raised in Village, Oregon, a very conservative setting, politically, socially, and went off to an evangelical college, George Fox College, which is now George Fox University. And that was a little ways away in Oregon also. Then I went east to get my master's at Princeton Seminary. And for the people who were with me in the West, that was going to the liberal East.
Right.
Right. And so they were worried that I was going to become this hell in a handbasket kind of lost soul when I went to Princeton. And I actually had some people in my church really kind and heartfelt concern. They took me downstairs, these elders in the congregation in Oregon, took me downstairs and sat me in a chair and prayed for my salvation as I went to the liberal
To
East.
Princeton,
And
yeah. They're like, wow, that was a big deal.
They were worried,
Yeah.
and I got there, and it turned out people had faith there also. And so went to Princeton Seminary, did my MDiv, and then I wanted to study the New Testament. So I went to Yale University for my PhD and had a great experience there. Then I graduated, went off and taught at St. Mary's College of California, which is a lot like University of Dallas.
Yeah, I actually applied there.
Yeah, and then ended up going back to Yale to teach a bit at the Divinity School.
Taught New Testament, right?
I was a professor of New Testament,
Right.
yeah, and that was great. After 9/11, I decided I wanted to be a little closer to the action. It seemed like the world was coming apart, and I ought to get a little closer than an Ivy League library. So I went into church work and was on pastoral teams in 3 or 4 churches across the nation before I started House United, which is what you know me doing.
Yeah, we're going to get into that tonight,
yeah.
kind of more of House United, which is a great organization. And so, I remember the first time I got to introduce you at
when I
Riverbend.
preached.
And it was exciting to kind of get to introduce you to our congregation that day. And I thank you for being here, all of you guys. And Alan, you have a wealth of knowledge in some of these things. And I think a passion towards what we're going to talk about tonight. And so I just want to kind of, one of the scriptures that I use often when I talk about politics and faith, and I know I did a promo video, I was like, either this is going to go really bad, it's going to be really stupid, or it's going to be really good. I know I'm stepping into some crazy places tonight, which is kind of what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been a pastor for 20-something years, and politics has been one of those things that you just can't talk about. Like, it's gotten so divisive and crazy and messed up. And so one of the scriptures that I always use is from Matthew 22:21 when I talk about this. It's not, and I say this kind of setting the night up, it's not the best use of the scripture because it's not what it's really intended for, but in my own situation, it works. So the scripture in Matthew 22:21 says, "Give this." Pharisees are trying to trap Jesus, and he says, "Give this." It's very famous. Give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and give to God what's God's. And so, I think I've spent a good part of the last, maybe especially 10, 15 years just going, all right, it's just too hairy there. It's too hard to walk into that. And I don't think that's good. I hope we can kind of delve into the night tonight, because I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's good. I don't think the church benefits from it. And it's just become this super big faux pas. And I know even tonight we got people probably on both sides of the aisle watching us tonight. So I'm glad you're here, and hopefully you'll engage in a way that's healing for our church. So kind of first question for you guys, for all of you. I'd love to just tell me if you've had, what your experience has been with the political stuff and church, if it's been a good experience or if it's been difficult. I mean, you already just shared a little bit about, hey, you're going to the east, and that's this, but and you, Grace, too, I'd love to hear from all you guys. What has been, like, for you guys in your own experience so far, politics and faith? Has it been, and I'll share a little my stories in a little bit. So, Ty, tell me, how's politics and faith been for you? Has it been an easy thing, difficult thing?
I don't think you touch it, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to say that you can. It seems like it's really easy when you find people that agree with you, or when you talk to people that think they agree with you.
Yeah.
But if you're on the wrong side of the aisle,
Shut down, right?
yeah, it's weird how quickly it becomes a non-starter,
Right,
right?
for sure. Yeah, we kind of gather towards those things. How about you, Grace? Have you had any good, bad, or other kind of experiences with politics and faith?
I go to a Catholic university, actually. So a lot of the conversations tend to be heavily theological as far as differences go. When it comes to politics, I feel super, super blessed to have a group of friends where we can really dig into our differences on different things and not feel really threatened by each other. But outside of certain circles, I definitely will find myself watching my words a little bit, not wanting to be like, okay, understanding I am a Christian and I'm very vocal about that, and understanding what I say about politics might influence how people think of me either way.
Yeah.
It's an interesting line to kind of walk, especially as a politics major, where people want to know, okay, you're a politics major. Why? It's because you're this, aren't you? And I'm like, well,
They've already judged you, kind of like to what they think you.
yeah,
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it?
it's interesting. It's an
Yeah.
odd experience
Yeah. for
because
sure.
everyone thinks something different.
Right. Well, it's interesting how we automatically make some really quick judgments about what we think people's political leanings or ideas are, and kind of put up those walls. I was sharing with these guys earlier, and I'd love to hear from you, Alan, too, but this is probably about 10 years ago. I had I was living in California. I was living in a place called Big Bear, and loved living in Big Bear. Great church there that I got to serve, and so some wonderful friends there. But it was about a time when Prop 18, I think it was around gay marriage, the issue of gay marriage, and there's a lot of pressure from the other churches in town for me as a pastor to come out and stand in the corner and picket towards their leaning towards this whole thing. It was really interesting because I said, I'm not going to do that because I'm trying to care for, shepherd from people from both sides of the aisle, and said I'm not going to do that. And it was really interesting. And this is a small town. They just were like, well, you must think, kind of what you just said, Grace, like you must. They judged that they thought, they kind of predisposed what they thought my political ideas were, mixed in with faith. And just kind of, even in the round town, kind of like, well, Aaron's this guy. He believes this and this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, just kind of ran me through the mud. And then I was young. I was pretty emotional about it. So I go on Facebook, like every real smart decision is to go put on something.
Instantly put it on the
right,
internet forever.
like everybody who's watching has done at some point. Like you're listening to me, and I know you've done this. And I put the thing on Facebook, kind of saying, hey, I'm in the middle. Like this is what I was trying to do and kind of communicate. And I'm just getting beat up. There's like 250 comments on this. I mean, I've saved it forever because it's just one of those experiences. Just ended up just getting beat up from both sides of it. And that was the moment for me too, Ty, where I just was like, yeah, I think I can't go touch that anymore because I got beat up pretty from that. I mean, I'd love for if you're online watching us, share with us if you have any of those experiences.
Hey, Sherry Foor, let me give you her brilliant comment here. She likes to drive right down the middle of the road so she doesn't get hit by either side.
I love that. That was good. So, Alan,
I'll take that into account.
But
For
Aaron
you-
drove down the middle and got hit by both sides.
I got hit by both sides. I was getting rocks from both sides. Have you had those experiences too, Alan? Has that shaped you towards what you're passionate about, by bringing people together?
Yeah, so I told you about the prayer group in the basement of my evangelical church in Oregon, and then I got to Yale and was in the faculty and actually heard over luncheon one professor pray facetiously that there wouldn't be any evangelicals in the incoming class, right? And so you've got these two sides who are characterizing one another almost as demonic.
Right.
And I loved people in both groups, and I thought, well, these people just need to get in the same room and talk about the things they agree and disagree on. And so, I mean, one of the things that I've experienced in my work is to go around the nation, not much of that going on right now, but to go around the nation and help groups talk about controversial things together. So healthcare or immigration or abortion or, right, the hardest issues that we face, and get churches or schools or corporate groups talking about the things they know they disagree on, but have stayed silent about. And you'd be surprised if people have tools, if you help people develop tools and skills, they can stay with one another and they leave actually loving one another. Instead of kind of, I could have loved him, but it's because I didn't know his politics or her politics, right? And the other impact of that, Aaron, and I've been thinking about this all day, is when I go into a church and do that, where they have once a month, once every other month, a conversation about some political issue, and it's monitored and hosted and facilitated, and they make it out and nobody died, right? No fatalities. They look at each other and say, maybe we can do this. Well, then the pastor is freer to preach and touch subjects that wouldn't have been touchable before, because suddenly everybody has a little bit of a voice,
Right.
and it's not as much a bully pulpit.
Yeah.
So it frees, the congregation doesn't feel like that's the only voice in town,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
And so,
See, that scares the crap out of me, though.
Does it?
Yeah, I mean, I want that,
yeah,
but at the same time, I think because I've been so wounded by these things, I wonder, and I would love for you to talk more about this. I have the perception, and I wonder from your guys' point of view, and I'd love to hear online too, from people in different places, have we become, my assumption is we become more divisive. We seem to be on this divisive kind of track of intensity, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And that's my perspective at 43 years old, and maybe that's just the way it's been for, as long as we know. Do you guys feel like, I feel that way. We talk about it. Do you, especially you, Grace, I'd love to understand what a 19-year-old thinks, if you think it's becoming more divisive in your short time.
I mean, I am pretty young in terms of being aware of the political landscape of America, or generally the world. I do think I'm inclined to say it's become more divisive. My study of history, and especially the insults that were thrown towards Thomas Jefferson's wife during certain elections, might lead me to believe otherwise, but I think social media definitely doesn't help. I mean, echo chamber is a big word and idea that's thrown around and is enabled by social media and being able to choose and customize the truth that comes across your path,
Right.
which just makes it a lot easier to other people. And
Yeah,
I
the
guess,
delivery of
yeah.
social media goes pretty fast now,
Yeah.
where Thomas Jefferson wasn't having quite
that's
the
true.
speed
It's true.
of
Little
Facebook
slower.
and Instagram going on through it. So I think that's a good point, Grace.
Yeah.
Ty, what do you think?
Oh, totally.
Yeah?
Totally. I mean, just in my 36 years, I remember being a kid, and you'd hear like political conversations at the dinner table, right? And it was more playful jabs. at the person you didn't agree with.
Right.
I remember a lot of that. I remember that well into my high school years. And then as social media started to bloom, we all started to have louder and louder opinions, and it's real vitriolic.
Yeah. Do you think it's gotten worse, Alan?
Yeah, and the numbers bear it out. We're at Civil War level polarization right now, and
Feel it.
that's both in Washington and on Main Street.
Right.
They call it elite and popular polarization. One of the things sociologists have asked why, right?
Mhm.
And it turns out that Americans have over time been polled as to what primarily identifies us, right? So somebody asks, is your race more important? Is your religion more important? Is your hometown more important? What makes you who you are? And they've been asking this for a long time. And recently, who I am, what party I'm in, eclipsed any other of those indicators.
Wow.
And so we're more political and politically identified than
Yeah.
we've ever been, which means if you disagree with me, Aaron, you're disagreeing with me, not my idea.
Yes.
Right? And that makes it more vicious.
Right.
Because suddenly I'm at stake if you disagree with me.
Yeah.
Well, take it to the next
right.
level too, where it's only me, and go take that political idea that's me and slap the Jesus sticker on it,
Yeah.
and now it's really
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah.
On both sides of it, right?
Right.
Because now I've got God on my side, and it's me, and it's like now it's on, right? Like,
Yeah, and the problem, and this goes back to what Ty said, I don't touch it because, right? And your own worry about preaching anything near it or bringing anything up
Yeah.
about it. If churches decide we aren't going to talk about politics, and the nation is identifying primarily with its own politics, then we aren't ministering to the primary thing people are.
Dude.
And that doesn't mean
That's
dec-
heavy.
that doesn't mean
that.
declare from the
Yeah.
pulpit, but if we don't touch it on Sunday, it's not going to be the case that they don't touch it the rest of the week. They're just not going to have a place where they can talk about it in a healthy way, right? They're never going to learn.
Well, Grace, what do you think about that? I'm really interested in your perspective as a 19-year-old here, because that right where he said right there was like profound to me. Like, tell me how that hits you.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I mean, just interacting with politics as, again, my major. How many times am I going to end up saying that?
I love it.
And being a Christian on Sunday mornings, I mean, I wrote a scholarship essay about the Johnson Amendment, where it's like, there's not a lot that faith communities feel like they can do, Christian communities feel like they can do when it comes to talking about politics. It's legally kind of sticky, and B, you don't have that context of real empathy and understanding with each other. Like you're saying, Alan, when it's you disagree with me rather than you disagree with my ideas, that makes it a lot harder for a pastor to maybe talk about or navigate those waters, and for Christians with one another to navigate that, because then
Right.
you're attacking faith as well. And
What
calling
I'm
into
wondering
question
too,
that.
Grace, in this,
Yeah.
and for you too, Ty. Like, I mean, Ty lives in the church world here a little more than I do. Like, do you feel as paralyzed by this as I do, or is that just I've had to deal with it as a pastor for a long time? And do you see like you talked about your friends, like in your peer group, they seem to be cool with you guys because you guys are open. But outside of that, do you see people your age being kind of paralyzed by this fear of getting in that, like what I'm talking about? Or is that just a 43-year-old married thing?
Oh, gosh. I'd say it's an eternal thing.
Yeah.
Can you say what you want to say and feel free? You mentioned earlier that you're fine with your friends because you trust one another, but getting
Outside
outside
that
that
friend
circle of
it is
trust.
definitely trickier outside of, even with other friends, just outside of certain specific situations where I know that I've talked with these people a lot about a lot of different complicated, nitty-gritty, 2 a.m. serious kinds of things.
Right.
We can talk about anything. There are other friends where it's like, I know where our friendship is, and we can't quite talk about some of these things. The nuance I want to come across to you just isn't going to come across
Right.
Yeah.
in the same way. Or the
Right.
nuance I want to hear from you, I don't know if I quite can.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab the mic. It might make a little noise. We'll try not to do that. I wanted to mention a comment that came across from Paul Vibrock, and it's on this. He says he's found that a respectful discussion about political or controversial topics require you to take a stand on the issues. And sometimes, again, that goes back to what you can't just have a conversation. And then Sam had mentioned that sometimes you can feel judged going to the gym by what news station you put on.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. That's
really
crazy.
true.
That's crazy. So you feel that too, Ty?
Yeah.
Do you feel paralyzed by it? Am I?
So, you know what's interesting is, to me, and I think Alan touched on this a little bit, if our politic is what we hold most dearly to us, right? If that's a key factor in our identity,
Right.
the problem for me there is that politics is inherently group identity.
Totally.
Right? Especially in America. I don't think it's unique to America, honestly.
No,
We see
no.
this kind of division going on all over the world today. But when you're latched so tightly onto a group identity, right, and we can't have a conversation because if you say something we disagree with, we're fighting at a very deep personal level. I mean, we're holding our government or feelings about government and governance tighter to our chest than we do our religion. That means we're always talking from a place of identity crisis. Always.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Right?
That's huge.
That
Which-
is huge. I know.
Which,
Yeah, that's big.
so the thing
Right.
is, but that, like, if that's where we're coming from, you can't talk rationally when you're in crisis, right? I don't know how many, like, good rational conversations you've had during COVID,
Not many.
but I've fought with my kids about the stupidest garbage every day for 10 weeks.
Well, the COVID, the COVID thing that's going on right now is crazy in a lot of levels. And I've noticed this, like, and it's this weird phenomenon. I think you've talked to me about 9/11 doing this for you. Like, so the crisis or whatever happens in our history, there's like a month of us being like, we love each other, one love, yay. And then like a month later, it's like back to the identity thing and back to this
Yeah.
stuff. And it's like, oh, man, what is going on? But when you said earlier about it being so connected to your identity, it makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense once you get out of that, the adrenaline coming from some of those things. You got some, Kev?
Yeah, I do. This is sort of on that same thing, because I think what you're saying, Tyler, kind of elicited a few responses. It's difficult to discuss politics when people equate politics to salvation. It doesn't become a debate, but something like judgment. It's kind of scary in that sense because you can experience detachment from the community. I don't know this person's name; it's just a call sign. So, but that's
Well, that's probably one of the things that I've noticed, and is just as a pastor, really difficult for me. When I think I've spent my life trying to communicate God's word, to try to get people connected to Christ, to their Creator, and for me, what I really struggle with was when people mix that stuff that I feel is like it's very sacred to me. I mean, when you mix that with the political kind of landscape of stuff, it gets so messed up. It to me, it really waters down the gospel. It really messes with what I see the narrative of the Bible. It's so hard, but at the same time, I know that's valid. I know that people's political opinions and ideas and passions, that's how God made them, and He's given that to us too. But it's so hard when it gets mixed in this big soup, especially for me as a pastor. Like, there's many times when I hear people say stuff, kind of mixing those two. What I would say is putting the Jesus sticker on their political views, and it drives me nuts. Like, I just want to lose it.
Right.
And but it's so widely accepted now. You live in that world, right?
Yeah, I do. And one of the lenses that you can look at this whole landscape through is every once in a while I just back off and I say, okay, this nation is 70% professed Christian, right? So listen to the way people talk to one another and see how many you find who listen to the guy who said, do to others as you would have them do to you, right? Just simple golden rule assessment. Are you listening to someone as you'd want to be listened to? Are you talking to someone as you'd want to be talked to, that is forthrightly or whatever it is? But golden rule falls in a tribal society, right? It just doesn't hold, because when red trumps or blue trumps who I am in Christ, I lose all moorings to the way I want to treat people in my sane moments.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
That kind of reminds me of, I mean, I go to a great books kind of classical liberal arts school, so of course they have us reading St. Augustine.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just reminds me of, for him, the entire thesis of City of God Against Pagans. It's a real quick read, as you can see.
Hold that up so they can see
Coffee
the
table
camera.
book.
Like, you
Yeah.
got to see the quick read that she's talking about. For Grace, it's a
fun
quick
book.
read. For
It's
the
a
rest
fun
of
book.
us, it's like 3 years.
His central thesis is to fight against the idea that Christians make bad citizens. And
Mhm.
his
Right.
kind of conclusion in that, besides not quite knowing who belongs to which city, which is a whole thing unto itself,
Right.
is the idea that when the political order is out of order or disordered with the Christian life, Christians still know where virtue lies and are still able to pursue that and should still be able to pursue that. So it fights against that whole idea of politics being central to who you are and your identity.
Right. Well, you know, and that is something for me, and more of a missional. When you look at the history of the church, it's always grown when it's under persecution, when it's not the political, you know, the majority of political whatever. Whenever you see, I mean, even to this day, and much of the New Testament, I mean, your New Testament professor was written under a lot of persecution for being Christians. And they didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have a voice and have all these kinds of things. But that's when you see Christianity flourishing under those kinds of, I mean, time and time again through history we see that. You know, we can talk about China even as a modern part of that. They don't, the underground church there is flourishing. Things are going on. So, Grace, I think that's a great point, and I think history backs those things up.
It really does.
Yeah.
Well, and virtue stays our bearings, right? Whether we call it golden rule or classic virtue,
Yes.
as Augustine would have put it. One of the things that I think a lot about is, you know, right now, the classic way to think about how religion can influence politics is to lobby from one side or the other.
Right.
Right? We have left-wing pastors or right-wing pastors or leaders lobbying Congress or lobbying the airwaves or social media. I have this book, Resident Aliens, by two guys from Duke, Stanley Hauerwas and Will Willman, who write the book in order to make the point that the best way that the church can participate politically in a democracy is to actually be the church well, right? To embody what it is to be church and model that rather than trying to rail on one side or the other of the issue. And within that will be, some of us are red and some of us are blue, and we figured out how to love one another, right?
Yeah, I like that.
And that, there's a 2nd century author, Tertullian, who was an apologist for Christianity, but before that he was a skeptic and a lawyer, and he was converted in a way that shows up in his apology. It says, I argued against them, this being the Christians. I argued against them, but see how they love one another, how they would even die for one another. And that becomes the turning point for him. Not an argument, not a lobbying the Senate, not Christians being Jesus people will be transformative, even in a tribal society.
Dude, I'm seeing that play out right now. We obviously have all the COVID stuff going on, and there's been this, you know, growing movement that's been happening here, starting with Riverbend, but other churches are joining in too and feeding people. And you know, we've been talking about that a lot at service. You know, recently I went out, did a video. I think we're going to show it at some point, trying to get a lot of footage. But there was like 7 or 8 churches represented there, at this
Mhm.
helping serve and working together and trying to feed people. And I would take some of the pastors off the side and interview and talk with, I've been around the game long enough. I know that when you say you're from this denomination or you're from this kind of church or from this thing, whatever thing is, I know your theological bent and probably your political bent and everything else. Like, we all do that, right? Like, you
Cracked
talk
the
about
code.
being judged at certain things. Like,
Mhm.
I do the same thing theologically. I go, okay, they're from this camp and that camp because that's the world we live in, right? And to me, it was just such a beautiful thing that no one gave a crap about that
Mhm.
out there. They were just all sweating in the sun, feeding people,
Yeah.
doing whatever they could to do it. And it was the church being the church. It wasn't even, I'm proud of Riverbend, but the beauty that was going on in that was like, this is
Yeah.
it. You have those glimpses of it.
Yeah.
I guess I want that to be life. And I don't know if that's, you guys, is that possible? Is it possible for that to be life? Like, that's
the longing for heaven, I think.
maybe it is, but like, the entrepreneur in me goes, can we do that? Can that
Yeah.
be church?
Yeah.
Like, for
Yeah.
real, But in my soul and my spirit, I'm drawn to that so much.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so raw and real
Yeah.
and powerful. I
Yeah.
don't know. Are you?
I think that's what Jesus was up to in the Good Samaritan parable, right? Everybody knew what Samaritans were. Everybody knew they were low life, scum of the earth people. And so he made one of them a hero of his story, right? And I think one of the services that we can do as church is to humanize people who aren't a part of the group we're a part of, right? Because when empathy stops, when we stop thinking that the other person is human, currently over half of Americans think that people from the other party are unintelligent or less intelligent than average, right? And over a third think that people from the other party are more immoral than others.
That's
Right?
crazy.
So you're either evil or you're stupid if you disagree with me, right?
Talk
And-
about like tribal,
Dude.
dude, like hardcore right there.
Yeah,
That's
and
crazy.
so if we can help one another to see the humanity of the people who disagree with us and see the intelligence and see, you were talking about these conversations you have with people you came to trust, right, Grace? If we can humanize the people that we disagree with, it gets us at least halfway home to do to others as you would have them do to you. Or I was hungry and you gave me something to eat may get turned into I was conservative and you were a liberal and you, or
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, whatever
Um,
those things that divide us. Yeah.
Jesus shows up in the other person.
Go ahead, Kev.
Right.
Yeah, well, I have to quote a really cool book right here.
A House United. Put it up on the screen. This is Alan's book. It's awesome. You got to read it.
I'm going to plug Alan for Alan.
Amazon, right? Amazon.
You can get it on Amazon.
There you go.
Sure can.
Go get it right now. You'll
I've
love
read
it.
this book. I read it as soon as you gave it to me, Alan. I'm a fan. And this is on page 175. You said, press to boil down the driving passion behind this book down to a simple sentence. I'd write this: God gives us our difference as a gift, an asset, rather than a threat.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
God gave the American church and the whole republic, both liberals and conservatives, and that by our elective segregation, we ungratefully leave that gift unopened.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
Very well said.
That's kind of the
So-
House United, the guy over
House
there.
United. Put it up on the screen there for us. So I'd love to ask this of all of you. Like, how do we begin to heal this? How do we begin to see this politics and faith thing start to turn a different direction? And, maybe Grace and Ty, you don't know, but I'd love to hear if you guys have some thoughts on that. And I know you do, Alan, but either one, how do you guys see us, like I would love to be in the place, like this is where I know we would be successful, is when I could stand on stage or I could go on a show and I could actually be myself and say, this is what I think and I feel, without the fear of just getting obliterated, right? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I'd love to hear from your guys' thoughts about what we can do to because I got to believe it's got to get better.
So I think, what do I know, honestly? But
Well, you're a smart guy.
when we come back to the talk about tribalism and that kind of stuff, and we look at the passage out of I forgot where in the Bible, because I'm a good
Matthew
Christian.
22?
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
About giving to Caesar and giving to God.
Right.
I think we've got to do a better job as believers delineating what goes to whom, right? I think
Right.
we've really blurred some lines.
So what do you digging that a little deeper for me? Tell me need some more details of that, or like.
Well, again, this is just
I like what you're saying, but
this is just years of me shadowing people, ghosting people on social media,
right.
but seeing that equation of I am aligned X politically, which makes me right? And it's that there's a spiritual authority to that assertion that maybe
Right.
shouldn't be as present. And so starting to untangle those lines of what are the things that belong to politic and government, and what are the things that belong to God
Yeah.
in our core. And then I read an interesting article the other night, posted on Facebook by my good friends, Bev and Sam, Paul.
I read the same one.
Yeah, really,
This one
really,
is really good.
really interesting. That talked about.
Shout out to Bev and Sam.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but the kind of the key things I walked away with were we tend to carry ourselves and project ourselves in conversation with something that the author defined as an unfounded certainty. Right? As we come in guns blazing, very, very confident in our position, which makes it very, very difficult to listen to people. And kind of the corollary of that was when you come in with this unfounded certainty, there's no room for nuance in your conversation. There's no room for complexity of thought or opinion. And we need that because we're people and we suck. We're very complex, right? I mean, we're the sum of millions of parts and experiences and beliefs and generations before us and the internet that we just consume today, and enormously complex people, all of us. So we've got to make room for nuance.
Well, then added the fact that the older I get, the more I realize just how messed up I am.
Dude.
You know? And, you throw that into the equation, I'm starting to realize, that's kind of weird at 43, but you add that in the equation of just us being messed up and pain and how that's affected our views and perspectives and how we interact with people like that.
Oh, yeah.
That gets deep into how we're doing it. That's what I mean. Sometimes these things just feel overwhelming to me. Like, are we going to see the tide go a different way?
But when Alan talks about humanizing the person that we stand across the aisle from, I mean, that's where it comes in, right?
Right.
If I am that complex, if I've got my set of baggage that, let's be real, I'm only, within the first couple of meters of understanding, and there's a whole heck of a lot below there. There's no reason that I shouldn't expect that you don't have that as well. And so whatever hard opinions that you come to the table with are informed by a world of.
So would you be calling for just basic humility?
Yeah, I think.
Does it start there, Ty, and goes into some more nuanced stuff?
I think Sam Boone likes to say all the time that we need to listen to understand.
Yeah, he does
right?
say that a lot. Yeah.
And so, which is
Right.
beautiful advice.
Yeah.
Because listening to understand requires you to stop and not hear the things that you disagree with, but hear the person behind the words.
Yeah.
When listening is a humble act,
Really is.
right? One of the things that goes over most hits the audiences to whom I speak when I go around the nation. At the end, I always challenge them. I have one bit of homework. One time every day, look in the mirror and say, I could be wrong. Right?
Yeah.
And they all go,
Let's all do that
"Whoa," right?
together,
And
right now.
yeah, but this isn't, as
Group
Ty's saying, the
self-awareness,
setting,
right? Yeah.
the arrogant setting of our culture right now, where we immediately go to the authorized place of saying, my tribe is right, so I am right, right? My red tribe or my blue tribe is right, so I am right. There's no space for humility in that.
It's difficult.
Do you find that? Okay.
I was just going to say, on the other side of looking in the mirror and saying I might be wrong, the other one is you might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought of the same thing. He says that all the time when you have to have a conversation.
You might be right.
I love
And
seeing
you
you
might
guys-
come up against someone that disagrees with you. His main advice is to say, you might be right,
Yeah.
which is really, really helpful, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Grace,
yeah.
I'd love to hear from how you see this as a 19-year-old. You're starting college. You're
Yeah.
looking at the landscape of the next 40 years of life and these kinds of things. Like, what do you see? And maybe maybe you and your friends even talk about it, about what would help with this political mess.
I think definitely keeping in mind you might always be wrong is very important, and someone else might be right. And I think it starts, one of my friends said this, I wish I could credit them, said just try to start a conversation not assuming the other person has certain motives, just not prescribing a motive.
Mhm.
Don't you think that's so hard, though?
It is so hard, but
Yeah.
it's such
Like
a
so-
simple thing
it
to try
is
to turn
simple.
on.
But that to me is one of the, I love that, by the way, but man, that is hard because I think we're kind of wired in some ways to make judgments, right? To be like,
Yeah.
this person's thinking this and this. I mean, and maybe I'm the only one. I don't know, but
Of course
I think
you
we're
are.
kinda- yeah.
Of course you are.
I think I would have a harder time starting a conversation without a motive, just myself, if I turn it back on me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right? Not
Uh-huh.
thinking about your motive, but just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I love that, Grace. I think that's really good, but that's
Credit
hard.
to whoever said it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a couple comments that have
Cool.
been coming in sort of on this. Our buddy John Bloss is saying, I learn the most when I'm open-minded. I learn the least when I'm rigid and not willing to hear others. Keith has to say, seek first to understand and then to be understood. So,
Love
Well,
that.
a
Same
couple pearls of wisdom there.
What do you think, Alan? You got into it a little bit, but like if
Well,
to
one
that
of my
point-
one of my observations about your generation, Grace, because I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. Are you 19?
I am 19.
Yeah.
Tell me
So
what my generation
Generation
does.
Z wants the conversation. The
That's
generation just above them is worried about offensive speech from the people across the way, and kind of sometimes shies from mixing it up.
right.
And maybe in reaction, there's new research. It's not fully developed, but there's new research that's showing that Generation Z is more inclined to say, let's talk about this. Let's
I hope so.
let's disagree. Let's figure it out, right? Which is encouraging to me. And I think it is probably a reaction to, I'm not fond of the snowflake, the way people call college students are above snowflakes. I think they have reason to have fears about what they're hearing, but there has been a hesitation about hearing what I disagree with, and we'll shut down that speaker or we'll shout down that speaker because that's offensive to me. Your generation seems to be moving in a more robust generation, robust culture, a robust way. So you disagree with me? I want to hear about it. Is more in Z than it has been in the last couple, which is encouraging to me.
I'll take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, it's-
I think that's great. to
And I
hear.
think it all goes back to grace. See that double
Wow.
meaning of
There you
the.
go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I like that. It's good stuff.
Bring it on.
See what I did there? Yeah, so I think what we haven't talked about is, okay, if we're all listening well, and we're all trying to get to that humble place of honoring the other person, saying you might be right, I may be wrong, there still exists prophecy, right? There still exists speaking the truth that we have or the light that we have.
Mhm.
And I'd love to hear from you all, because we've already talked about how hard that is if you're a leader of a group, a pastor speaking from a stage.
Right.
But even just in daily life, how do we, and this is where the two identities actually mingle a little bit, because we believe some things are true. And so how do you speak truth, your truth at least, what you have come to as truth, in a mixed crowd, and not go to this sort of relativistic, well, what everybody says is fine,
Right.
right? Because that's the flip side here. The
Yeah.
danger is, okay, now we're all nice to one another, but ideas don't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's white noise.
Right?
It's just
it's
blah.
yeah, and that's wrong also about I think how the world works and how God made it. So how do you do that?
Oh, that's a conundrum. I think I have to come back to another kind of family household Hedges saying, which is does come from the Bible, speak the truth in love.
Yeah.
And the question of, what does love require? Because, I mean, ideas do matter, and when you are a Christian and there are some things that just kind of rubber meets the road, are what you come to know and understand and live on as truth. It's hard. I mean, I'm a debate
is.
kid.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
used to
Bang, bang,
going
bang, yeah.
at it and then
Yeah.
shaking someone's hand and thinking that they're awesome for disagreeing with me as
Right.
heartily as they
Yeah.
did. But
that's
that's
unique
when,
though, Grace.
yeah.
There's not
Yeah.
a lot of people who are, I mean,
Set
that's,
up to
that's
do that.
cool.
I mean, that's the skill set,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I man, like I said before, I think the kind of gray, white noise of the blah because no one's sharing what they're really believing or what they
Yeah.
really think is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, and I think lots of humans, most humans desire to have that vulnerability. You can be honest and real. And so I think I've noticed that I think what Grace said, and it's your household Hedges thing, but you know, if I have honest conversation with people who I know love me, then we can go anywhere. And they could say,
Right.
Aaron, you're being a dummy, or that idea.
A community of trust then, right?
Yeah, because
Community
there's
of
trust there. But and I genuinely know that they love me and care about me. But dude, when people are outside of that, like I'm a fighter. Like bring it on. You know, like
Yeah.
Kevin knows he's
Okay.
laughing because he's like,
Yeah.
it's like in my tribal group of people that are like, okay, these people love me and they care about me. We can say whatever, but man, outside of that, like, and that's where I have to be careful, you know. But that love piece, but
Yeah.
that's Jesus' message, right?
Yeah.
Like loving people, caring for them, being genuine about that, putting others before yourself.
Right.
That's all part of that whole process. So hard though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ty, you got any thoughts on this?
Not any good ones.
Come on.
I gotta really.
You're overdoing the humility
Can
thing,
you-
man.
Oh gosh, no.
No,
the
he's
humility.
referencing.
I am-
he shouldn't say what he was in his head.
I'm probably the opposite of Aaron, where if I'm mixing with people outside of my camp, I find I have a lot more capacity to be patient and still and listen and
Uh-huh.
respond and be a lot more level-headed. And I'm sure Kevin will vouch for, like, if you're in my sphere, I wrestle with gentleness a lot. The artist comes out,
Right.
and all of the words come out,
Uh-huh.
and I will fight tooth and nail for what I believe is correct
Right.
every time.
This is where my Italian
Every time.
heritage comes out. Where I'm
Yeah,
ready to fight
there's-
everybody else.
If it is, if it's my team, there is no diplomacy coming from
Right.
Thailand. This
Right.
is not a strength.
Yeah, we are opposite of that. That's why we do
Yeah.
this well together. Like, I feel it's so much easier for me to do that with people who I really trust and love. Like, you know, all the grace in the world. But the people outside that thing,
Yeah.
it's hard. You
Yeah.
know, it's a tough one.
One of the pictures that stuck in my mind that helps me at least when I try to imagine speaking the truth in love, what it looks like. I was leading a conversation in a church in Arizona, and they came to a point, it was on environmentalism, right? And they came to a point where they were really getting at each other, and it wasn't constructive anymore. I like it when people take the gloves off and start to actually say what they think on the lines of what we were just talking about, but this has gotten a little too far. So I stopped them and did a little moral imagination exercise, which is for 1 minute, picture the person you disagree with and try to understand why. Don't talk to anybody, just quiet. And so a minute is a long time in a room with 100 people sitting. And so they're sitting there and they're closing their eyes and they're thinking, and I see tears coming down on one of the women in the back. And sure enough, when we finish, I ask for what they thought about, and her hand shoots up, and she's sobbing. And she says, I am so strongly environmentalist. I am a lobbyist for the environment, but I sat and pictured the West Virginia miner who can't think about next generation, who has to think about whether he can get food on the table for his family right now. And he doesn't have the luxury of thinking of what the future looks like. If his industry goes away, he goes away. He doesn't know what he's going to do.
Right.
And she said, I won't stop thinking the things I think. and I won't stop speaking about them, but I will speak differently.
Wow.
And that was her version of getting to, how do you do this? How do you speak the truth in love? Well, I'm not going to change the truth, but I am going to talk to people with that guy in mind.
Right.
Right?
And Alan, if I'm not mistaken, this is something you do, what do you call it? Crucial conversation?
Courageous conversations.
Courageous
yeah.
conversations, and sometimes they last
They're about
hours. And
Yeah, an hour. Well, I usually try to shut them off within an hour and a half. Yeah, but they
Okay.
keep going. They keep talking afterward for a
Spinning
long time.
off different
Yeah.
things.
And
really,
there's
yeah.
sometimes you're listening for a long
Long
length
time.
of time.
Yeah,
You're just absorbing.
yeah, right.
Something from John Bloss, and by the way, Ashley. Hey, Ashley, we'll get to you in a bit. That's a good question, but I want to come back to that. But John Bloss just wanted to offer, funny how trust is the key to all these conversations. How can we get to trust others faster so we can have these important discussions?
Yeah.
We've been talking about love and grace,
Yeah.
trust.
It's a big deal.
What's the book? 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yeah.
Lencioni, the bottom layer is trust.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's trust as well.
So, Alan, I'm interested. Do you again? I'd look at Riverbend in our context. We seem to be we try very hard to be a church that says everybody's welcome.
Mhm.
We have people from both sides, and we're proud of that. I think that's what God's called us to do.
Yeah.
So, how do we begin, even in our own context of Riverbend, to be able to be like vulnerable and raw and real about these things? Because I do think there's this balance of speaking the truth and the love and all this stuff, but I still feel like, even in our own context of Riverbend, there's still a lot of fear about that. I
Yeah.
assume that's
Yeah.
other places. We tend to be less, I would say, homogenized as other churches.
Right.
We do that on purpose.
Right.
And the other churches are great too. They're doing good stuff. That's what God's called us to do. But
There's
there's
definitely
there's fear there.
there's an unspoken tension to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I preached, I said that one of the first days I came to Riverbend, I parked next to a Trump sticker, next to a Hillary sticker.
Right.
Right.
It's a great story.
And I went inside and just imagined the congregation and what was in the room. Yeah, I think you're already doing a lot of things that foster that hope, at least.
Right.
Dave, especially the preachers, seem to honor everybody who's in the room. One of the problems in preaching right now is people go for the applause, but they don't realize the applause is only coming from half the room.
Right.
Right? And the other half, if you keep doing that long enough, the other half is going to go somewhere else. This church doesn't seem to do that to me, which is a great leadership move in a polarized nation. I think what you're doing in this setting is another kind of chip away thing, because a sermon doesn't model conversation.
Right.
A conversation models conversation. And
Right.
so having people who think differently about things and can talk meaningfully with one another and respectfully and lovingly with one another about important things, even if it's for microphones,
Right.
right, is a big deal. What we do in these congregations where I work is we even stage sort of an artificial policy meeting, right, and say, okay, healthcare, we got to solve it, and you've got to say what you think about it. You can't homogenize, right?
Mhm.
And at the same time as you do that, you have to respect the person who, right? And that, I think of it like practice. You get better at it when you don't even know you're getting better at it,
Well,
right?
that's the thing. It doesn't even seem like it's out there. I mean, that is part of the vision of starting something like this, and I hope we can kind of progress into a
Mhm.
place where we can really dig into some things that would be off bounds for most churches. I really hope we can get in that. I think my hypothesis is that would be attractive to people who don't go to church regularly. I mean,
Mhm.
if you don't and you're watching, we'd love to hear
Right.
what you think.
Right.
But do you think that's part of what's gone on? We just don't see it anymore. It's like become extinct about sitting in a room across from someone and saying, well, this
Right.
is what I think of Scripture or politics, whatever else it is. This is what I think, and going, well, cool, I love you, and we can have a good discussion about that.
Yeah.
Because to me, it feels like it's extinct. Like it's not there.
Yeah, there aren't venues to do it
Yeah.
very many. Now I should mention, so my thing I call House United, but there's a group that was called Better Angels. Now they're Braver Angels. They do red blue workshops. There are a growing number of nonprofits who are trying to help Americans learn this kind of work, right?
Right.
I think the church is built to do this kind of work,
Yeah.
right? We're born of people who disagreed.
Totally.
And I mean, one of my favorite facts about Jesus, and I like a lot about Jesus, is he hired 2 out of his 12 guys from absolutely opposite positions
Mhm.
on the issue that this verse raises tonight,
Right.
right? The most controversial issue among Jews in Palestine in the first century
Taxes.
was Rome or no Rome.
Yep.
And he hired Simon the Zealot, who was no Rome, and Matthew the tax collector, who was a revenue agent for Rome,
Right.
and said, okay, you're going to be 2 of my 12 guys, let's figure it out,
Right.
right? The church could be a sort of national movement to figure this out. If we stopped saying, okay, my side is right and your side is wrong, and we won't talk to one another, right? If we actually said our mission right now in a nation that's approaching a second civil war, if we don't watch out,
Right.
our mission right now is to figure this out and then export it,
Yeah.
right?
So
That-
this is more into the deeper theological, even political landscape of Jesus' time. You have the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Zealots, right?
right,
Those are your 4 big political parties, right? We see those guys represented within the 12 disciples, or at least within the early church, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so you see even Jesus and who he was saying, I'm picking from the different big political parties who all had strong, I mean,
Yeah.
these guys were fighting
Yep.
type of stuff. So it's in our heritage, right? It's from our leader.
Yeah.
He says, we bring all that stuff together.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me too. And it makes me think about the church in America. Do we look like that? Do we look like we have across America all the different kind of groups represented, or do we go from region to region and go, it's all this way and it's all this way and it's all this way? We've gone so tribal to go back
Right.
to it, but that's not how Jesus picked his own crew
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning. So
Right.
you gonna say something, Kat?
Yeah, I have the benefit of having a laptop in front of me and going, what's that verse? What's that verse? So I'm going to look smart when I'm really not. 1 Corinthians 9, when we get into Paul saying he'd be all things to
Yep.
all people.
Yep.
The verse from 19 to 23 says, to win this group, I'm going to do this. To win that group, I'm going to do that. And by winning, he's saying, I want to bring them into what I believe is a lasting faith, something that's going to be wonderful for their lives. He says, to the weak I became weak, to win the weak to the strong I became strong. And there's a list of people. He says, I've become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some.
Mm.
I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
good stuff.
easier said than done, right? That's a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to too. I mean, as I listen to you talk about the needs, Grace and Ty, I go, oh man, this is a lot of work. Like this is not sermon and song. We're done. We're out the door. Like it's work, you know. And
Yeah.
maybe that's part of the reason that the American church has not done it, because they're like, oh, dude, this is going to be heavy.
Yeah.
I got a lot of other things I got to do. Do you feel that? Is that
Yeah,
what you see?
it's a path of least resistance is people I agree with, right?
Right. It's easier to do it that way. It's a
Yeah.
lot harder. Like when we do at Riverbend, I always tell people, man, it takes us twice as long, 3 times as long to get somewhere, because we're trying to grab all these people from different places because it's
Yeah.
important to us. It'd be a lot easier if we all thought the same thing, felt the same way. We're like, here we go.
Right.
But we don't. And I think it's beautiful, but it's hard. And maybe that's the reason why
Yeah.
people bail on the Holy. What do you think, Ty?
That's the joy of the rebel church, right?
There it is.
I mean,
There
that's
There
you
you
go.
go.
it's our mission to be countercultural.
Jesus was punk rock, right?
And the reality is, the thing that we're up against is a cultural identity. So we're getting pushed down, everyone, not just one group of people,
Right.
but everyone's getting pushed down by, you've got to conform to an identity structure based on the mass. And the reality is the only way to dismantle that is at an individual level.
Right.
I think. So there's no long solution there, right? That's generations.
Grace, you going to say something?
Oh, just how difficult it is to straddle that line where you're all things to all people. That's again kind of coming back to, you can start having an identity crisis as a Christian if you're trying to absolutely reach out to everyone or try to fit in with absolutely everyone, rather than just, okay, the core of who I am is a Christian, a Christ follower, and I'm going to do the best I can to attract as many people as I can with that as my foundation. That's not easy stuff. That's hard.
No.
That's hard.
No, you got to be sold on the core of it,
Yeah,
right?
all in.
Yeah.
Which is the beautiful thing about Riverbend. I mean, that's what has always attracted me to Riverbend, is this idea of we're willing to put it all on the line. We'll put literally everything on the line, because at the end of the day, however you want to call God or whatever label you want to give it, we think it's worth your pursuit.
Yeah.
So come in the door.
Right. Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you risk, if you're not strong on your sense of calling or mission or whatever you want to call it, I think that's definitely identity crisis territory.
When one of the guys I admire, I heard a guy named Edgardo Colon Emmerich, who's a Duke theologian, talk once, and he's Latin American, and he does Latin American theology. And he said, I think of ethnic ministries like I think of section rehearsals in churches, or in choirs, right? You have the altos over here, you have the sopranos over here, in different rooms trying to get their parts down. Because you need the solid, this, right? But none of them are doing that in order to stay in the alto section. They're all doing it to go back out into the big room
That's good.
and make good music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to know my part, and that's the solidity at the core I think you're talking about. And yet I've got to be ready to be with the whole gang, and that's hard. I mean, it's just hard. So
I feel like, though, in that, and that's kind of what I want to land tonight, is like, I think that part of what's going to take is a commitment from groups of people like us to say, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to, and we're going to stick to it, and we're going to take the lumps from both sides of it, whatever else goes on, that kind of thing. And, you know, I worry about what I'm going to hand down to my kids. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I know you and I've talked about that too,
Yeah.
you know, like, I feel passionate about my kids being able to have that freedom and that vulnerability, you know, and I think, you know, people like Grace are kind of on the edge of that, but, you know, it's so much easier to do the easier. This is a lot harder work, but I think it's worth it.
yeah.
And I think it glorifies. I think you could see God glorified through politics,
Yeah.
which may sound like a really crazy thing to say tonight, but I think you can see God glorified through politics if we committed to that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that could be world changing. You know, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, were you
Yeah,
gonna say something,
well-
Grace? I don't want to cut you off there.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think we earned you said it's a little complicated to say we could see God glorified through politics. I think we earned saying that tonight. I think we navigated our way there.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, I think the conversation for me
Yeah.
at least brought that.
Yeah.
Tonight, you guys have been really encouraging to me. I hope you guys at home watching this and engaging with us, I hope this is just the beginning of a conversation for you. And, you know, I'd love to keep interacting with you on that in different ways. And if you're new to Riverbend, hopefully this gives you a little bit of a flavor about kind of where we're coming from, and hopefully that is attractive to you too. But continue these conversations. I think this is going to be a journey. And I want to thank Alan and Grace and Ty for all being here tonight. You guys are amazing. Online, give them some love. They're awesome. And
Thank Kevin for 1 Corinthians 9.
Kevin
man.
for
Yeah, for his research.
Kevin and I we're gonna wrap up with some Bob Marley. It is Bob Marley night, and this is kind of Bob Marley's, like, one of his anthems. It's called Redemption Song, and you know, I'm gonna kind of sing it and play it in a way that hopefully we do see some redeeming things come out of this craziness. So. Old pirates, yes, they ride by, sold out to the merchant ships. minutes after they took us from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear from atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand beside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption song, redemption song. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alone. Leaning on the everlasting arm. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear from atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand beside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. Don't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had is redemption song, redemption song. These songs of freedom, my song of freedom. Yeah, it's always fun having Kevin play the keys. Hope you liked our little Bob Marley / old school mashup there. Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, guys. It was a great night of discussion. Tomorrow night, Carlton's going to be having some hymns. Does he have anybody joining him, do you know? Carlton always has someone join with him. Some good hymns hanging out tomorrow. Thursday night, Dave and Diane, and I think Todd, too, hanging with them, right? And then Friday night in this room, they'll be doing Immerse again. Join us for the shows. It's great to be together as a family, connect from all political aisles and things, worshiping God, connecting each other, encouraging each other. Stay online. Keep doing those things. Invite your friends to come be a part of this. Share these things on Facebook and on YouTube and all these types of things. join people, invite people to join the movement at Riverbend. I think that it's worth it. So, and then 10 o'clock Sunday morning, we're going to be rocking out and having a good old time together. So thanks for being with us tonight, guys. We will talk to you guys soon. Bye.